Much like most video games, you don't have to be convinced to kill in Deathloop. I mean, sure, the game shows you some of the ways how. It tells you how to aim, how to sneak up behind someone, how to kick a dude off a cliff. It introduces you to the huge spectrum of ways you could murder, but it doesn't really need to convince you that you should. This is relatively par for the course for games, and it's not necessarily a criticism. Much like Doom, Hitman, or Devil May Cry, Deathloop is largely a game about process. Tell me the demon is evil, tell me the target is an oil baron, and then let me loose in a playground of death. The method I use to take out these enemies is the game here, not figuring out my motivations why. But unlike any of those games, Deathloop's setting, a time loop, provides a chance to think about the ramifications of kicking a dude off a cliff with slightly more nuance. And, as much as I like the game, the fact that it doesn't take this chance is, I think, a bit of a missed opportunity. I'll get back to that. First, let's talk about why the time loop is cool. A time loop is an inherently video gamey concept, and you can see that manifest throughout a playthrough of this game. Let's compare Deathloop to Dishonored, for example, another title from the same developer. Dishonored, much like Deathloop, has lots of wacky, off-the-wall ways to kill characters. However, Dishonored put a lot of weight on how the effects of killing people would ripple out into the world. Kill too many people, and rats would start showing up in greater numbers, guards would be more numerous and vigilant, the ending itself would be significantly darker. In Dishonored, the quote-unquote morality with which you completed a level established a sort of internal canon for the game. Your character was either a delicate professional who never killed anyone and slipped through the levels like a shadow, or your character was a complete agent of chaos who did the craziest stunts you've ever seen before plunging his blade into a dude's neck. If you chose one route and then wanted to see what the other felt like, you as a player could restart the game and replay the level, of course, but that's an action outside the fiction of the game. Internally, the character remains consistent. He has no idea that the player who's puppeteering him may have played this level already with a dozen different variations of deadliness. But in Deathloop, the main character, Colt, is living out a day that repeats over and over, which means that Colt's experience and the player's are pretty closely aligned. He learns where each enemy is and the best way to manipulate them at the same time as the player. He retains knowledge just like we do. Colt, just like us, can play the same level as the delicate professional and the agent of chaos, deciding which he prefers at the same time we do. Eventually, for instance, I learned the best way to get across this level was to dart across the rooftops, drop through a window, jump across a hanging plane wing, teleport through these lasers, quietly open the door, and get personal with my assassination target. I learned this through many, many trial and error loops of the same day, which means Colt canonically experienced this day as many times as I did. It was occasionally frustrating, but ultimately very satisfying for me to get the whole sequence right, and I presume Colt, grumpily trying this level over and over again with me, actually felt a similar emotional arc, frustration leading to satisfaction, us both experiencing the familiar endorphin drip of slowly mastering a system. I expected I would enjoy learning all the parts to the Deathloop ecosystem, but the looping mechanic also led to a surprising phenomenon in my playing experience. I got less careful. My first couple times around the loop, I played extremely slowly, methodically, essentially how I played Dishonored. Aha, I thought, I've cracked it. If you creep through the levels, tag every enemy, take each out from range with a silenced pistol, nothing can stop you. How can I get better at the game when I've already mastered it? And I was partially correct. That tactic never stops working. I probably played through the same sequence 20 or more times in Deathloop, and if I wanted, I could have snuck through every time, a shadow that never faces direct conflict. But I eventually came to realize, if I'm going to do this all again, if there are few real consequences for failure, why would I play in a way that's so boring? Going slow and stealthy is a pretty faultless strategy, except who's got the freaking time, man? If I'm gonna be living out this day forever, I'd like to do it in a way more interesting than crouching around corners with a silenced pistol in my hand. It's how my version of Colt, deadened to consequence through dozens of repeated levels, ended up wielding grenades, dual SMGs, and exploding rifles through much of the experience. I sprinted through buildings and leapt from rooftops and had fun doing it in a way I never really got with Dishonored. Through countless repetitions of the same day, Deathloop taught me that self-preservation, minimizing collateral damage, getting in and out unscathed, none of that was really important. As long as you accomplished the goal, who cares about how cleanly you did it? In this way, playing through Deathloop feels like learning to speedrun a game. You first learn the rules of the simulation, and then push them until they break. Sometimes, if you aren't familiar enough with the rules, playing like this looks like magic. My friend Haley once posted a video of her speedrunning a level in Hitman 3, and I had to watch it half a dozen times before I fully understood what was happening. She walked in, fired a shot to attract the target's attention, fired again and took him out, popped another guy on a balcony far above, and simply sauntered back out the elevator. The whole thing takes about 16 seconds. It is a bananas, godlike way to complete a level that normally takes far longer, and it's a method only learned through constant repetitions. Sometimes the methods used in speedruns can seem calloused or cruel when described to an outsider. In Bloodborne, you might kill the nothing but helpful doll because leveling up from her corpse is slightly quicker than leveling up from her living body. But when you speedrun a game, you play it dozens and dozens of times, enough repeated loops that the representations of what each mechanic are fade back into their original impersonal code. To us, embroiled in the world and story of the game, killing the doll might seem monstrous. To them, the game is just a series of puzzles to be solved in the fastest possible way. They know that, for the purposes of a speedrun, the emotional consequences of acting monstrously might as well not exist. When they reset the game and play for an even faster time, the doll won't remember being killed. The second act of most time loop stories is consequenceless living, and it's a pretty fun one. Bill Murray steals a car and drives into a quarry, Andy and Kristen crash a plane and vibe in a pool, Tom Cruise tries to roll under a truck with varying degrees of success. Side note, even though Edge of Tomorrow isn't technically based on a video game, I will die on the hill that is the best video game movie ever made. Anyway, it's very fun to see our characters hurl themselves into the void with reckless abandon, knowing that it won't affect their next day either way. But I think there's a fairly important distinction between any of these events and the violent hedonism of Deathloop, and it's this. Although the characters in these stories frequently off themselves in violent and hilarious ways, the wild abandon with which they treat death largely stays internally focused. In other words, they don't become mass murderers. There are certainly tonal reasons why this is the case. Palm Springs and Groundhog Day are both comedies, Edge of Tomorrow is a motivated thriller. It's hard to imagine any of their pacing and tone being able to withstand a random murder spree. But this is the case because I think the stories get that there's a difference between Bill Murray dropping a toaster in his own bathtub and, Bill Murray getting more violent than simply punching Ned Ryerson. And I think a major reason we never see our characters, punt a guy off a cliff is the understanding that that sort of violence affects who they are as a character. Since these stories always end with a person escaping the time loop, it would be a disturbing endnote to think of our protagonist returning back to ordinary life after a repeating eternity of causing others pain. How would they adjust to treating others with care again when they spent so long without a consequence for their random cruelty? Deathloop, as we've already stated, is a game full to the brim with causing other people pain. Deathloop is a game about making the deadliest, most intricate Rube Goldberg machine of murder you possibly can, learning the system inside and out until you can manipulate it like a marionette, knowing just what strings to pull to cause each part to move. But it's in the ultimate goals that the connection between the character and the gameplay, Colt's motivations and his actions, get a little more strained. Through all the marketing and all the campaign of the game, the message for what you and Colt are trying to do is clear. Break the loop. Find out how to stop living the same day over and over, figure out a way off this island. Our main antagonist is a woman named Juliana, who has the singular goal of stopping him. Colt can't break the loop if Juliana kills him first, every single day. And Juliana is perfectly consistent. She lives in the loop, she loves the loop, she knows the loop allows her the foresight of a god and an existence free from meaning. She asks you, isn't this easier? Doesn't the outside world suck? Wouldn't you prefer to just live in this playground of death forever, continue to perfect the sport of hunting each other into infinity? Juliana loves to hunt, and that's what she does and what she is content to do. And through the game, Colt enjoys the same dizzying freedom as Juliana, the same power and deadliness, but unlike her, he, and theoretically we, the player controlling him, are trying to get back to a world where humans aren't just code to be disposed of in the most entertaining way possible. Which is why I think it's so weird that the beginning of the game already has Colt as a rollicking, murder-go-lucky dude, because what does he want to escape to? Who is Colt if not for this time loop? I have no idea. The only personal expression I've ever seen from him is how creatively he offs people, and I am intensely curious how, if at all, he'd be able to rid himself of the consequenceless mindset he's been in for the past eternity. At the end of Groundhog Day, Murray figures out how to be a good person. At the end of Palm Springs, Sandberg finally understands what's important in life. At the end of Deathloop, you become the absolute peak killing machine you've been training for since the beginning, and then you're done? Just like that? Aside from one relationship level twist I don't love, I don't feel like Colt really discovers anything about himself during his dozens of hours or hundreds of years in the time loop. And I think that's what I want in a story like this. What did they learn about themselves? What did they discover? What... Oh boy! Here we go. 12 Minutes is another time loop game that came out in 2021, and like Deathloop, also focuses on nailing a specific sequence of events. Unlike Deathloop, the loop of 12 minutes takes place over somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes, can't remember, and it's in some ways a much more grounded story, centered on one apartment and only 3 characters. Conceptually, I really like 12 Minutes, because it plays into something I've pondered myself. If I gave myself an absurd goal to accomplish within a day, but was able to try over and over and over again, could I do it? Let's say I wanted, within 24 hours, to get a meeting in the Oval Office. Is there an exact series of words I could say, calls I could make, events I could cause that would result in it? It's like a combination of monkeys banging on typewriters and the butterfly effect. Eventually, by trying enough different things, where could I end up? 12 Minutes doesn't have you talk your way into the White House, but it does pose an almost equally absurd problem. Can you both avoid a violent cop and solve a years-old murder without ever leaving your apartment and within 12 minutes? Fair warning, I'm going to spoil some parts of this one, and double fair warning, it may be more entertaining to hear this game talked about than actually play it. Let's go. So, if you don't do anything at all, the loop of 12 minutes goes like this. You're a dude who comes home, greets your wife, starts a romantic dinner where she tells you she's pregnant, then a guy who claims to be a cop breaks down the door, handcuffs both of you, yells at the wife that she's under arrest for murder, and chokes you out. Then the evening starts again. Right off the bat, there's a lot of stuff you can try. You can try and convince your wife that you're in a time loop. Some claims are more effective than others. What would really convince someone that you know what's going to happen? You can try and fight off the cop with a kitchen knife or something, but he will virtually always overpower you. But, like in Deathloop, there's a feeling of consequencelessness that sets in as you loop over and over and over again, and so the things you try start to get more extreme. One of the earlier moves you can try, one that I think is actually required for progression, is just to hide for the whole time. Don't let your wife see you get home, hide in the closet, let the cop come and attack her and pry some previously unheard info from her, and then shoot her. You can just hide for the whole thing. And although on some level I felt bad about letting my wife get murdered just to see what would happen, the fact that I did get some new data to use in my next loop was a lesson to me. I internalized that I wouldn't be able to predict what scenarios would provide information and what wouldn't, so I just started trying everything. Like a monkey on the butterfly effect typewriter, I pushed buttons at random. What if I eat my dessert before dinner starts? Nothing. What if I go in the bedroom and turn off the lights? Nothing. What if I stab myself? Nothing. What if I stab my wife? Nothing. What if I take sleeping pills? I fall asleep, then nothing. What if unbeknownst to her, I give my wife sleeping pills? Well, I'm not sure if this is the intended way to play 12 minutes, but it sure feels like the way most people end up playing it. And as the game kept repeating and solutions didn't present themselves, any sense of ethics was the first thing to go. I didn't stab my wife because I hated her or thought she was evil. I stabbed her because I was out of other things to try. 12 minutes isn't as inherently gamey as Deathloop. There's no button to kick dudes off cliffs. You're not shown how to kill in the tutorial. In many ways, it feels like it takes death more seriously. Or at least the actors sell it more. You believe that it's hard for the protagonist to do the horrible things you direct him to do. At least the first time. But you do them anyway. And they escalate, from druggings to torture to more. Eventually, you find out some truly heinous shit about yourself and your past. By trying every combination of things in this apartment, I unlocked repressed memories. Whoops. And then, the end of the game basically asks you to decide what you're going to do with these now unlocked horrors. You want to keep living your life? You want to run away? You want to just forget it all? But my question, and I'm now starting to feel like I'm in a time loop of my own, is what is this character going to do with all the present horrors, the ones he just did? How do the memories of all the near-mindless stabbings, druggings, tortures follow him into the real world? Unlike Colt, this guy didn't seem to find any pleasure in all this violence, but he did it all the same. It feels like no matter what happens next, he should be profoundly affected by this. But we don't see it. Because once again, the story assumes that the actions he and we take mid-loop are consequenceless, and so they won't make an impact. And I just don't think that's an assumption we can make. I don't know. I recognize this topic is kind of impossible, because, time loops don't exist. They're a brilliant fictional device because they're so good at revealing all the aspects of a character they might keep under wraps in the normal world, but I've felt silly several times writing this, spending so much time thinking about the ramifications of a situation that none of us will ever face. We can't hit the reset switch on harm we cause others or learn the perfect route through a difficult situation. Maybe there's an argument to be made that people who are almost entirely sheltered from the consequences of their own actions, royalty, and the mega rich, do often end up acting in the ways you might if no one's life mattered. But then, there are decisions in even their lives that mean things. They can't descend into true time loop nihilism. I think the reason I'm frustrated with the lack of self-reflection to accompany the violence in these stories is I actually have seen it done before. I've seen it done unbelievably well. In Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah's short story, Through the Flash, we meet a character who's essentially lived through Deathloop, lived an incalculable amount of time as someone like Colt or Juliana, and then had to keep going. Let me set up the story a little bit. So, in Through the Flash, our main character is a 14-year-old girl named Ama, though that's a bit misleading. She's been 14 for, at this point, thousands of years. Unsurprisingly, if you've been paying even a little attention to this video, Ama is stuck in a time loop. Actually, her whole town is. At the end of the day is the Flash. The town is essentially nuked. And then the same day starts again. She says in the early days of the loop, the whole town would gather to watch the Flash together. At the beginning, they would have a party when someone woke up, meaning they realized they were in a loop. And then the beginning ended, and the days stretched into the near infinite, and Ama made the same decision we make the second we boot up Deathloop. I'm going to use this loop to become the best murderer I possibly can. There's a several hundred-year period where Ama is to herself and to the town Knife Queen. Like anyone who's ever met a middle schooler knows, the power of a 14-year-old is terrifying. She says, "I use my body better than anyone. I can jump Olympic, I can break grown men with my bare hands. I could kill all 116 people on my cluster in 1 hour and 22 minutes. I'd take a shower and change halfway through because my clothes got so heavy." She promises that whatever the worst thing you can imagine is, she's done it to everyone, more than once. I'm not going to read the worst things described in this story because even for our gamer desensitized brains, it's a lot. Ama even had her own antagonist, the Juliana to her cult, or the inverse, a boy named Karl, who she hunted for years and who often returned the favor. They each perpetrated unwritable horrors on each other. But in Through the Flash, there's nothing anyone can work towards, no breaking of the loop or solving the mystery. That repeated day just becomes life. The things Ama does to other people becomes who she is. And so, after hundreds of years, she decides she's not going to be Knife Queen anymore. Instead adopts mantras about everyone being supreme, being infinite, and I think she mostly believes it. But it's not like her past is gone. She still thinks about what it felt like after she had murdered everyone on the block. She could be alone and feel like no one could hurt her ever again. She still sees Karl and thinks about the time she fed him. Still alive, screaming in his mother. Well done. She has a conversation with her neighbor, an old woman named Mrs. Nagel, where Ama confesses that she's worried she liked the old me better, that it was easier. Mrs. Nagel gently pushes her, asks if it really was a different person, an old Ama that did all the torturing and killing. Ama says, the old me did everything one way, and only thought about one person. Now I try to help everybody instead of killing them. I used to be afraid. I know I can't take it back. I know I'm the worst person who ever lived. I know that. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm only scared of me. Mrs. Nagel asks again if that means Ama's been two different people, and in that moment, Ama pictures crushing Mrs. Nagel's neck like crumpling a piece of paper. But she doesn't. How can you not see the difference, Ama says. I'm so much better now. I am. And Mrs. Nagel says, I think you've done a fine job. And it's true that in the past you were a terrible witch, but I think there's only one Ama. And I think I'm talking to her. Through the Flash, unlike Deathloop, unlike 12 Minutes, is a story about how your actions create an impression upon you always. Even if no one else remembers it or yesterday is the same as tomorrow, being a person who performs great violence or cruelty means you are a person capable of performing great violence or cruelty. Time loops are machines for introspection. Colt will not instantly become a new person if he breaks the loop. 12 Minutes protagonist remains someone who did everything the game entailed, no matter the conclusion. The beauty of Through the Flash is that it acknowledges this, knows there's no such thing as consequenceless actions, and yet shows that you can work to get better regardless. No matter how many times the sun rises, no matter if it's the same sunrise or a new one, it's you. It's you. It's you.
I don't know how much sense this makes, but the first time I felt like I really made it in this gig was when I got my videos put on Nebula. And that's silly, I know, but I had always looked at the creators on Nebula as like, that's what I want to make. That's the standard that I want to be at. And I've been putting them on Nebula for a year now, and it's great, and they have no ads, and they have bonus content. Nebula is a streaming service. But I still look at the creators there, and I think, wow, look at the things that are possible with this format. Does this work as an ad? I think it would work on me. I don't know. I think Nebula is the best place for this particular brand of storytelling or learning content or whatever. And yeah, this is an ad. Like, I want you to buy it. But I think it's an easy sell because it's $15 for a year if you follow the link, you know. And I think it's good. I think it made me a better artist. There's other stuff too, of course. There's a Roku app that people are really excited about, and there's CuriosityStream. The link is curiositystream.com/Jacob Geller. Like, it's that is a place that you get for the same $15 that is full of documentaries and nonfiction titles. You get two amazing streaming services. It's a good deal, but I don't know. I think if you're creative, it is really important to expose yourself to art that feels better than you could ever make. That is what helps me motivate myself, helps me kind of push further, and that's what I use Nebula for. But you could use it for background noise while you're washing dishes or something. It works for that too. It is a good service, and in any case, I think you should get it. I think it's good.